stranger crashes into you on a Friday night and whispers, "Play along, act like you're my wife." You have 3 seconds to decide. 3 seconds before the woman approaching spots the lie. 3 seconds to either walk away from this madness or dive into the most thrilling deception of your life. Most people would run, but you're exhausted from another soul-crushing day, tired of being invisible while organizing spreadsheets until midnight. What if this desperate stranger's gamble becomes the key to unlocking the version of yourself you forgot existed? Here's what no one tells you about playing pretend with a gorgeous stranger. Sometimes the performance becomes so convincing, you start believing it yourself. Sometimes fake becomes more real than anything you've ever experienced. The question is, when the curtain falls, will you have the courage to find out if the magic was real or retreat to your safe, predictable world? Because once you say yes to playing his wife, there's no going back. Once you taste that rush of living on the edge, your quiet little life will never be enough again. So what's it going to be? Will you walk away from the most exciting proposition you've ever received? Or take his arm and whisper the 3 words that will rewrite your story? Hello, I'm Sarah. The fluorescent lights of the office hummed their familiar tune as Sarah stared at the glowing screen before her. 10:23 p.m. The number seemed to mock her as she stretched her aching shoulders, her designer glasses sliding down her nose from exhaustion. Around her, the marketing firm lay in tomb-like silence. Cubicles that had buzzed with life hours ago now stood as monuments to abandonment. "Just one more client proposal," she whispered to the empty air, her voice barely audible above the building's mechanical breathing. Her fingertips bore the telltale marks of someone who lived through paper cuts and keyboard calluses, while her lower back screamed its protest after another marathon day, hunched over spreadsheets. The city night greeted her like an old friend as she finally escaped her corporate prison. Above, a magnificent moon hung like a silver coin against the velvet sky, its light fighting valiantly against the urban glow. The evening air caressed her skin with unexpected warmth, a Friday night blessing she rarely allowed herself to notice. The taxi queue stretched endlessly, a snake of weary souls seeking passage home. After 30 minutes of futile waiting, something rebellious stirred within her chest. "When did I become afraid of my own 2 feet?" she mused, adjusting her leather briefcase and clutching her precious folder of weekend homework. At 28, Sarah prided herself on maintaining her figure despite the sedentary demands of corporate life. A brisk walk through downtown would be medicine for both body and soul, if she could remember how to let herself breathe. The streets pulsed with life she'd forgotten existed. Couples leaned into each other over candlelit tables, their laughter spilling onto sidewalks like champagne bubbles. Groups of friends moved through the night like constellations of joy. Their animated conversations painted stories in the air. Sarah watched this theater of connection with the bittersweet ache of an outsider looking in. When had her world shrunk to client deadlines and quarterly reports? Her last genuine night out flickered in her memory like a dying candle. 3 months ago, when her university roommate Emma visited for a conference, everyone else seemed to have graduated into lives filled with wedding rings, school pickups, and dinner parties in suburban homes. The unspoken truth about adult friendships hung heavy in her thoughts. Nobody warned you how difficult it would become to create new bonds when your calendar belonged to someone else's profit margins. Lost in this melancholy reflection, she never saw the bar door swing open with violent urgency. The collision sent her world spinning, her folder erupting like a paper volcano, documents pirouetting through the air in a mockery of grace. Time moved like honey as she watched her weekend's work scatter across the concrete canvas. "No, no, no!" The words tore from her throat as she dove to the fleeing papers, her knees hitting the pavement with bruising force. "Christ, I'm sorry, I didn't see you there. A deep voice cut through her panic as strong hands joined her desperate rescue mission.
If you are enjoying this story, please support me by subscribing, liking, and sharing. Subscribing makes you awesome. You are greatly loved. Sarah's eyes traveled upward to meet a gaze the color of autumn leaves, set in the face that belonged in magazine spreads rather than sidewalk collisions. The man appeared to be in his mid-30s, his dark hair tousled by whatever chaos had propelled him from the bar, a shadow of stubble adding rugged authenticity to his striking features. "Were you being chased by wild animals?" she snapped, the day's accumulated stress sharpening her words into weapons. "Look at this disaster." "You're absolutely right to be furious," he replied, his sincerity disarming her anger mid-flight. "These look crucial." "Marketing proposals from Monday morning," she explained, her tone softening as she recognized his genuine remorse. "Now I'll spend my entire weekend reconstructing the order." "Working late on Friday and still taking the office home?" His question carried a mixture of admiration and sympathy that made her chest tighten. "Someone has to carry the load, and since I'm the only one without soccer practice to attend or anniversary dinners to plan, I understand completely." He handed her the final stack of papers, but suddenly, his entire demeanor shifted like a switch being flipped. His eyes widened in what could only be described as terror as he spotted something beyond her shoulder. Without warning, his arm slipped through hers with practiced intimacy. "Play along. Act like you're my wife and keep walking," he whispered with desperate urgency. Before Sarah could process what was happening, a woman's voice called out behind them. "Marcus, there you are. We thought you'd vanished into thin air." The woman approaching them radiated the kind of polished perfection that came with unlimited budgets and personal stylists. Beside her walked a man who looked like he bench-pressed small cars for entertainment. Marcus, now she had a name for her mysterious co-conspirator, straightened his posture and tightened his grip on her arm in silent plea. "Sorry, I just came out to meet my wife when she texted that she'd arrived," he said with Academy Award-worthy conviction. "Victoria and James, meet my wife." 3 pairs of eyes turned toward Sarah with the intensity of spotlights. Every rational thought screamed at her to expose this charade, to walk away from whatever mess she'd stumbled into. But something deeper, perhaps the monotony of her predictable existence, perhaps a hunger for adventure she'd buried under spreadsheets, made her step into the role. "Sarah," she said with a smile that surprised her with its authenticity, "lovely to meet you both." The relief that flickered across Marcus's face was almost imperceptible, but Sarah caught it, feeling an unexpected thrill at their shared conspiracy. "You absolutely must join us for another round," Victoria insisted, her perfectly veneered smile gleaming under the streetlights. "We really shouldn't impose," Marcus began, but James was already steering them back toward the bar's warm glow. "Nonsense! We've been waiting years to meet the miracle worker who tamed Marcus." The bar embraced them with amber lighting and the rich scent of aged wood. Soon they were nestled in a corner booth, drinks materializing as if summoned by magic. Sarah chose a glass of Merlot, while Marcus opted for bourbon, liquid courage for their performance. "So, tell us everything. How did this romance begin?" Victoria leaned forward like a detective closing in on a breakthrough. Sarah's eyes met Marcus's for a split second before she dove into improvisation. "We met at a bookstore, actually, both reaching for the same copy of the last book on the shelf." "How romantic! What was the book?" "A Guide to Sustainable Investing," Sarah replied, drawing from her professional world. "We decided to share it rather than fight over it." "Best compromise of my life." We started meeting at coffee shops to discuss each chapter, and before we knew it, he gestured between them with a smile that seemed surprisingly genuine. "How long have you been married?" James asked, settling back with his drink. 6 months, Sarah said at the exact moment Marcus replied, 8 months. The silence stretched like a held breath. 8 months, Marcus corrected quickly, his laugh carrying just the right note of embarrassment. Time moves so differently when you're this happy. Sometimes I lose track. To the newlyweds, James raised his glass in salute. As the evening unfolded, Sarah and Marcus wove their fictional romance with increasing skill. Each question became a creative challenge, each answer a building block in their imaginary life together. When Marcus mentioned their cat Whiskers, Sarah smoothly explained her allergies by saying the cat lived with his sister. When Sarah described their fictional honeymoon in Tuscany, Marcus added details about the vineyard where he'd proposed. There was something intoxicating about this theatrical freedom. Sarah, usually cautious and methodical, found herself describing passionate weekend getaways that never happened and future plans that existed only in this bubble of pretense. The wine helped, but more than that, she felt alive in a way she'd forgotten was possible. Near midnight, after countless shared stories and several rounds of drinks, Victoria and James finally prepared to leave, extracting promises for a couple's dinner soon. Standing alone on the sidewalk as their companions disappeared into the night, Marcus exhaled like a man who'd been holding his breath underwater. "I don't know how to begin thanking you," he said, running nervous fingers through his hair. "Victoria is connected to my ex-girlfriend, a relationship that ended in spectacular disaster. If she'd seen me alone tonight, it would have been front-page news in their social circle by morning." "Ah, protecting your reputation as the mysterious bachelor," Sarah teased, understanding dawning. "Something like that," he admitted with sheepish charm. "When I saw them heading my way, I panicked completely. That's when fate decided to crash me into you. Well, I suppose we're even now. Your collision, my performance," she laughed, surprised by how natural it felt. "More than even. You were absolutely brilliant in there. I almost believed our story myself." "It was the most spontaneous thing I've done in years," Sarah confessed, realizing this was the first time in months she'd felt truly energized. "A perfect escape from my routine." He hesitated, as if weighing his next words carefully. "This was completely unconventional and probably insane, but meeting you tonight has been extraordinary, Sarah." "Likewise, Marcus." The moment stretched between them, filled with distant music from the bar and the gentle hum of the city that never sleeps. "I suppose it's time to return to reality," Sarah said, adjusting her folder. "I still have those proposals to reorganize." "Of course." His disappointment was subtle but unmistakable. "At least let me call you a cab." "No need. I live close enough to walk." They parted with a handshake that lingered just long enough to feel significant, and Sarah watched Marcus disappear into the urban maze before heading home with the strange sensation that her life had just taken an unexpected turn. Monday morning brought the familiar chaos of the marketing office. Sarah had spent her weekend reconstructing her scattered proposals and catching up on projects, but her mind kept drifting to that surreal Friday evening. At 11:30 a.m., Rebecca from reception appeared at her desk carrying an arrangement that looked like sunshine captured in glass, a stunning bouquet of golden roses and white lilies. "Special delivery," she announced with barely contained curiosity. "Someone's got a secret admirer." Sarah accepted the flowers with trembling hands, while nearby colleagues abandoned their keyboards to witness this unprecedented event. In her 3 years at the firm, she'd never received as much as a birthday card at the office. The small envelope contained a card written in elegant script. "For my beloved husband, dinner invitation, audience free this time, Friday, 7:30 p.m. at Bella Vista. Confirm at the number below if you accept. Your devoted husband, Marcus." Heat flooded her cheeks as she wondered how he'd discovered her workplace. Then she remembered mentioning the firm's name during their performance with Victoria and James. "So," pressed Jennifer from the neighboring cubicle, "who's the romantic mystery man?" "Just a friend," Sarah replied vaguely, tucking the card into her dresser drawer while failing to suppress her smile. The week crawled by in a haze of anticipation. Sarah, typically methodical in every decision, found herself purchasing a new dress and booking a hair appointment, small rebellions that reflected something awakening within her. Friday at 7:45 p.m., late enough to avoid seeming desperate, Sarah entered Bella Vista. The restaurant embraced diners with warm brick walls and hanging gardens that created an atmosphere of intimate enchantment. Marcus stood as she approached, wearing a charcoal shirt that made his hazel eyes seem to glow, his nervous energy matching her own. "You came," he said, as if he genuinely doubted she would appear. "It would be terribly rude to stand up my husband," she replied, feeling their shared joke dissolve the initial awkwardness. Without the pressure of maintaining their elaborate fiction, conversation flowed like wine. They discovered shared passions for classic films and mystery novels, parallel struggles with work-life balance. Marcus revealed he was an architect specializing in historic preservation, often working late on restoration projects that demanded perfection. "What did you think of that night?" he asked over shared tiramisu, his eyes searching hers. "Most spontaneous thing I've done in years."
Sarah admitted, "I kept replaying it, hardly believing I'd actually participated. Your improvisation skills were incredible. I almost convinced myself we really were married." "Well, considering all the stories we created, it would certainly be an interesting marriage," she laughed. Marcus grew thoughtful. "That night made me realize something important. My life had become predictable, safe, comfortable, but completely lacking in surprise. You reminded me how exhilarating it can be to step outside the script." "Exactly," Sarah agreed. "We become so focused on building secure lives that we forget to actually live them." That first real date led to a second, then a third, then countless more. Sarah found herself rediscovering forgotten pieces of her identity, her capacity for spontaneous laughter, her appetite for adventure, her ability to trust and open her heart to possibility. Marcus introduced elements of surprise she'd never allowed herself: impromptu weekend trips to coastal towns, cooking classes where they laughed through disasters, salsa dancing lessons that revealed their shared lack of rhythm but abundance of joy. 3 months after their sidewalk collision, they were strolling through the city's botanical gardens when familiar faces approached through the rose arbor. "Our co-conspirators," Marcus murmured, squeezing Sarah's hand. "Marcus! Sarah!" Victoria called out with genuine delight. What a wonderful surprise! The reunion unfolded with hugs and laughter, soon finding them seated at the garden cafe, sharing stories like old friends. "You two seem even more in love than before," James observed, noting the way Marcus watched Sarah as she spoke. Sarah and Marcus exchange that look couples share when they hold beautiful secrets. "We fall a little deeper every day," Sarah replied, meaning every word. As golden hour painted the sky in watercolors, Sarah marveled at life's unpredictable choreography, a moment of chaos, an impulsive choice, an innocent deception had revealed the truth that took years to understand. Life doesn't wait for perfect timing or flawless plans. Sometimes it's in embracing the unexpected that we discover what we've been missing most. Because ultimately, it's not the grand gestures that define us, but the courage to say yes when opportunity comes disguised as accident, when love arrives wearing the mask of coincidence, when the universe conspires to remind us that the best stories often begin with the words, "I'm sorry, I didn't see you there." What did you think of this tale of unexpected love? Share your thoughts and rate the story from 1 to 5 stars. Don't forget to explore more stories of the heart. There's always another surprise waiting just around the corner.